you for joining us at the ever-improving No Soundbites Allowed podcast. My name is Michael Vasquez. We thank you for joining us in this adventure of describing the politics that go on in our nation on a personal and local level as often as possible, giving you, the audience, more than just 30 seconds to understand what's going on in our nation. We look forward to joining you as we go. Just sit back, enjoy the ride. Please remember, if you like the episodes, like it, share it, let other people know, and if you can, please donate, even if it's $2, even if it's $5, because it all makes a difference. We thank you, and here we go. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. This is Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier, at your favorite podcast, the No Soundbites Allowed. And I'm doing another live podcast right now with Facebook and everyone there. And I apologize again to everyone in Facebook because it's dropped out twice now as we're trying to get this started. So I apologize. It's beyond my control. I can't handle how Facebook connects or not connects. But when it is connected, I will try and make sure I can answer and let everyone know what's going on. And I want to thank Ed, and I see Jim here, who's been letting me know about the video being stalled. I see Caswin's there, and Ellis is watching. So I want to thank you all for being there and watching this with us all. And I hope everyone can bear with the technical difficulties. Now, hopefully you are able to hear the sound effects that I have going on in the program so that you can hear them as I put them in, because I want to thank you for all of the help that you guys give me. And these applause are for you. For everyone who listens, who is involved and checks this out, I want to thank you for that, because you make all the difference. So just a couple of the effects. Now you can hear them. There aren't a whole lot. But let me jump right into this, because there's a lot of things that people have been very interested about, and I do want to answer everyone's questions. The first one is a couple of things that I do want to talk about in this episode is, first of all, I want to talk about North Korea and the North Korea deal, which I know Ed Caro had asked that I could bring that up, and I will be talking about. That's the very first thing. And I'm going to be talking about different aspects of it than probably what most people think of. In particular, say, the Logan Act, some comments by Mr. Dershowitz, a lawyer, a very well-known left-leaning attorney. Mike Flynn will be involved in this discussion as well. I want to talk about the Iran deal a lot. Actually, the Logan Act is about the Iran deal, but also in North Korea, I want to talk a little bit about why they're coming to the table and speaking with us, Kim Jong-un, and why he's suddenly been very, very eager to end the war and to move his nation forward. I also want to talk about an event that's going to be happening, and actually I'll be talking about that right up front, and that's going to be the homeless event that's going to be happening in Binghamton, being done by SUNY Broome. It is the 9th annual SUNY Broome Homeless Awareness Event, which will be happening on Friday the 18th, and that'll be at 7 p.m. that I'll be the featured speaker for that event, talking about homelessness. It is a non-political event, and I am not there. I'm there to just speak on my knowledge, and some words of encouragement and hope is the main theme there. It is not political. I know there's been a couple of people who've been on Facebook and trying to gear it towards a political event. It is not, and I will not bring politics into it. I hope no one else does either. It's to help people, and that's the most important thing. So I do want to do that. So we'll be talking a little bit about that. In addition, I also will hope to hit on, there was a mass shooting. I don't know if a lot of people are aware of that. There was a mass shooting in California, in Palmdale, California, where a 14-year-old has been arrested and taken in. And that's a shooting that you probably haven't heard a lot of news about, but yet I think it's very, very important, especially about the details about that, and we'll go into that. But let me come back full circle, go back to Ed Carroll. You had a question. I hope you're still there, and I'll let you know. Ed had asked the question, so what do I think about what's going on in North Korea? And it's a great question. And the answer to that question is North Korea is difficult on its best day. North Korea is, 65 years. We've been at a stalemate with the nation. There was a ceasefire. We never actually ended the war with that nation. and they've built up a military, and basically they've been in war preparations every day since the day of the ceasefire. And what we're looking at now under Kim Jong-un is that North Korea they've moved to the point where we're now seeing a possible reunification of the North and South Korea. We're looking at a ceasefire, the end of the ceasefire and actual peace talks, ending the war after 65 years. And we've received 3 prisoners back, which have come back to America, thank God. And I'm sure everyone is happy about that because that's a very big important. And, you know, it's something that I know a lot of people are very, very concerned about. So North Korea is a massive issue. I just got a message here as I was talking about that, so bear with me. I'm going to be trying back and forth to answer your questions. Oh, no, never mind. That's not related to this. So I'm trying to make sure that I'm answering all the questions from everywhere that it comes in. So in North Korea, we just received 3 prisoners that were held by North Korea. They came back home. This is something that we saw. Mike Pompeo had gone over. He was being attacked by the left, in particular the New York Times, about not being present as the president is talking about all the advances with North Korea. And as it turns out, he was actually overseas getting our prisoners and bringing them back home so they can be free. And I think that highlights a big thing about the North Korea deal. Right now, we're looking at, and for several months now, we've seen some figures on the left, especially in the Democratic leadership, that have been very, very angry and very much against President Trump and any of his actions. If you remember, it was just in February, and actually just a bit before that, that we were being told that President Trump is going to kill us, that we're going to be in a nuclear war with North Korea. And I find it very interesting. When we went into the 2016 election, we were asking our nation, we were asking our leaders to do something different, to not be the same old kind of politics that we have seen for decades and decades, that we need to break that cycle. We needed someone who could break that cycle. And we got that under President Trump. Whether you love him or you hate him, it was a different cycle. It was completely different. And so we elected him, and he's been here, and he's definitely done it very differently. This is not the same old politics that we're used to, which completely upsets all of the DC politic machine. And because of that, we're seeing results we have never seen before. And I put this on, you can put it on Bush 1, you can put it on Clinton, you can put it on Bush 2, President Obama. Every single one of them have reacted with North Korea in the same manner. They've gone through a process of appeasement. We give them money, we give them food, and we give little trinkets to the leader, Kim Jong-il or Kim Jong-un, and they stay in that same status of ceasefire. That's what we've been doing. And it moved nothing forward for the world. Nothing. All of a sudden we came out and we see that President Trump came up, and he came through what he likes to call peace through strength. He was very aggressive with them and said, no, we'll call your bluff. We are absolutely willing to go toe to toe if that's what you really want to do, but you don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. Let's actually talk. And it worked. And it's the first time. A new approach, a new path, and it worked. And now we hear the same thing about, Iran. You can't talk to Iran like that. We can't end the deal like that. Oh my God, we're so aggressive. They're not going to respect that. Actually, let's think about it. For the Middle East, for North Korea, for many parts of the world, they don't respect individuals that aren't strong enough and willing enough to stand up and say, no, I don't agree with you. That they argue and banter and bicker back and forth. I mean, I'm not saying this is a negative thing. It's not. This is the culture. Look at if you ever see any live footage of their markets, their legislatures, their parliaments, their governing bodies, they get in arguments, they fight, they attack each other. This is a big deal. They get very, very involved. And so they respect that in many cultures because that is the way they interact with each other. And it's not about violence. It's about attention. It's about aggression. It's about passion and strength of your passions. And so they respect that in many cultures to be able to do that. Now, I can't say that's not the same thing as, Canada or Great Britain, although we have seen in England, in Germany, in Italy, where there have been fights that broke out in Parliament and that they are anything but parliamentary. So it's a balancing act. It definitely is. But it is something that's very important, that we can achieve peace through strength. And in fact, we have to. We are the nation that everyone's trying to knock off. We're top of the hill. Everyone's trying to knock us off because we're free, rich, and powerful all at the same time. I've said that many a time, and I'll say it again. They're coming for us. So that's important. So I think that the North Korea, we need to act, and it seems like we're going to. Peace through strength is going to be a recurring theme on international politics. It's a very simple and it's a very direct international policy, as opposed to, say, the Obama administration, which had a very confused and a more appeasement style of international policy, where everyone's heard about the Obama apology tour that he went through the world, and he was apologizing to everyone. Well, that doesn't really help anyone. And then we saw, beyond that, we saw his overtures to North Korea, to Iran, and the nuclear deal, which I'm going to get into in a second. They're huge. Those are big, big things that didn't move us forward. In fact, we had more nations after our war in Iraq, after the Iraq War, while we're still in Afghanistan and was dwindling that down. We had many Democrats and politicians and pundits that mentioned and noted that we had less respect in the world under President Obama than we did under President Bush, and that's when we were in an active war. Peace through strength is a very simple international political policy, and it works. It's worked throughout the millennia. When you look at the ancient Romans, the ancient Greeks, Alexander the Great, you look at almost any empire, and I'm not afraid of saying America is an empire. That's not a dirty word. That's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's the empire of democracy. I have no problem with that. And we've seen throughout the histories of mankind that peace through strength often is the best way. And we have some of the greatest amounts of peace that comes from that. Not necessarily wars, but peace. Huge swaths of time where we have peace, as opposed to appeasement, which really doesn't help anyone and actually promotes the negative, not the positive. But with that said, I want to take a moment, and we're going to take a quick little break. You'll still see me on Facebook Live, and I'm going to try and get the music here, and hopefully you'll be able to hear the musical effects. Yeah, I might move my equipment around, so it's a little awkward for me. So I'm going to just try and get as this goes, I'm going to be writing some emails here. Well, hello, everybody, and thank you. I'm glad to be back with you here at the No Soundbites Allowed podcast, because you make it all worthwhile. That's right, because you make it all worthwhile as I try to get my sound effects going here. But I thank you, folks, for everything that you do. You really do make it worth it. And so I was answering, I think I answered Ed Carroll's question about North Korea. I hope I have. I also want to go into the Iran deal. Now, and hello, Dave. I'm glad to see you there, Dave Weston. I'm glad you're checking in. And so let's talk a little bit about what's happening with Iran, because that's a big deal. And one of the things a lot of people have been talking about the Logan Act. And I think it's very important to understand that aspect of it, because it's amazing to me that we've seen the Logan Act being called up. Now, many people are not familiar. The Logan Act was instituted back in 1799. I believe it was the January of 1799. And the Logan Act essentially it prohibits an individual from just going out and trying to conduct policy for the United States. It's a big deal. It's so that you can't circumvent the president of the United States and the government of the United States in international policy. It's a major deal. Okay, so essentially, having as an example John Kerry to go out to Iran and to speak to Iran on the behalf of the United States, trying to save the Iran nuclear deal, versus the opinion of the President of the United States and the United States government to kill that deal, those are two very big differences. And so, therefore, it would be considered an act of treason, or at the very least, a violation of the Logan Act to go out there and do that. Now, as far as I'm aware, there really hasn't been anyone that has ever been arrested or convicted of violation of the Logan Act. I believe there were 2 people who've been indicted under the Logan Act back in 1803. And I'm just looking this up and trying to get a good answer. In 1803, there was an indictment against Francis Flournoy, a Kentucky farmer who had written to, I believe it was, and I'm just looking this through, to France. And he had been trying to get some help there. There was no prosecution of that case, but it was in 1803, was the first time anyone had ever used it. And then again in 1852, Jonas Philip Levy, and he was also indicted under the Logan Act. He was a merchant and a sailor living in Mexico. And so it was his interactions with the state of Mexico versus the United States, and that did not go over well. But other than that, no one else has ever been indicted under the Logan Act, which is kind of interesting. So you hear people talk about it. It's a 200-year-old law. 2 people have ever been actually brought up to be considered to be prosecuted under that, and no one ever actually has, and no one has ever actually been found guilty. So when people are saying, well, we should have John Kerry, he violated the Logan Act and it's an act of treason. Not really, to be honest. It really isn't. It is a violation, and it's bad. It's acting in bad faith, but it's almost impossible to actually have someone who would be arrested and convicted under that. It would be shocking to the world because it's never happened before. The most that would happen is he would be indicted. And while there is no question he did this, to see a conviction would be unlikely. But it is a good example that even Alan Dershowitz, who is a very liberal attorney, has noted that, you know what, John Kerry would be guilty, very, very guilty, if he, in fact, if the Logan Act was actually enforced. And I believe he said that in a New York Times article, and there's one in the New York Post noting that he's violated the Logan Act, and there's several. The New York Times opinion. So there's a bunch of people who, and you got to remember, this is something that's been used on both sides. I mean, we saw that with under Michael Flynn. We saw that the Obama administration came out and they tried to charge Michael Flynn with the Logan Act and threatened him because he was talking to Russia on behalf of President-elect at that time, Trump, and was speaking to Russia on behalf of President-elect Trump, and they didn't like it, so they said it was Logan Act. Now, that doesn't apply because, in fact, he was speaking for a president-elect, so he was ahead of himself and would never really apply. But here with John Kerry, it's not the same. These are secret meetings that were not authorized by the United States government. That's a big deal. And I have to think, and I'm happy, by the way, since we're talking about Iran, I'm happy that the Iran deal is dead because it was a horrible deal. I wrote an article about this actually back on the mvass.com website, and I asked the question, how safe is the world after the Iran nuclear deal? That was July 14th of 2016. It was a very interesting question I asked. I asked very directly about Secretary of State, then Secretary of State John Kerry, about his victory lap on the 14th, that we had just given them $150 billion. Estimates were even higher about the total funds that we were going to provide. And we had to note that it was one of the first times that we had actively funded terrorism. That's the Iran nuclear deal. It's funding of terrorism. And that's a bad thing. And there were several quotes. Even Secretary Kerry, then Secretary John Kerry, admitted that he thought that the Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps were going to be getting a bulk of the money, the $150 billion that we provided, and that they are one of the biggest promoters of terror in the world. So that's a big problem. And if you ever heard what was being said by Iran at the time, it's insane. I know that Hezbollah, they just thought it was a great idea because they get their funding from Iran, and their leader on June 28th mentioned it, and we saw that as it was reported. And we heard that Iran itself mentioned that they were more than happy to continue to say, death to America, that they're going to kill us, that the Iran nuclear deal did not prevent them from being able to advance their nuclear weapons platform and program, and that their ballistic missile tests were going to go on, just as they always had, to be able to further their goal of being able to harm us and to kill America. So I don't know where there's a positive in the Iran nuclear deal. If you do, please let me know. I'd love to hear about it, and please just tell me about it. But as far as I can tell, there is no positive in that deal. I don't know of anyone who knows of a positive there. So please, if you do, let me know. But I have yet to see where we have a reason why we would want to be involved in this deal, because it's just not good for us. There's no positive there. When we have the Prime Minister of Iran, we have the Ayatollah of Iran saying death to America, that they want to kill us, that they're going to go forward with their nuclear weapons program, that the Iran nuclear deal didn't prevent them from being able to move forward with the nuclear weapons. Why in the world are we going to be in that deal? What benefit does it have to us? I mean, John Kerry's going over to save the deal for what? The Iranians themselves are saying that they believe that that deal allows them to kill Americans. Okay? I think I wrote that up on it was my article on July 26th of 2015, that, that this is a skeptical deal. We have to be skeptical. There is nothing positive about it. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the time in 2015 had mentioned that he thought that the Iran deal has two paths to the bomb. One, if they keep the deal, the other if they cheat on the deal. And it's always important to understand, Iran has lied to us many times. They're moving this forward every time. They're continuing to move forward with nuclear weapons. We've seen nothing that stopped them, and the nuclear deal did not prevent it. I mean, it left them with centrifuges. It allowed them to work on being able to have missiles that are capable of hitting Europe, Israel, and America. That's what they're developing. And we want to keep that deal for what reason? I mean, seriously, folks, where is the benefit here? Look back on the history. Tell me anywhere in that deal that actually works in the advantage of the United States of America. Is there anything? There really isn't. I'm not aware of a bloody thing. But, that's just me understanding the deal. So, and I'm really, really upset because it makes no sense whatsoever. None. But let's go forward. So that was one of the other things that I wanted to talk about. And when we look at this, so we have John Kerry. What's his purpose? Let's say that he did save the Iran nuclear deal. What does America get out of it? Iran has the ability to continue to have terrorism around the world. They're the biggest promoter of terrorism in the world, and they continue to do that. Okay. And we gave them the funds, the money, upwards of $450 billion, no less than $150 billion, to be able to fund terrorism, which is a lot of money to kill a lot of people. And that's horrible. That's horrifying. So let's see what else. What else do we see as a benefit of this deal? Okay. And as I said, I have a cold, so excuse me. But what else does John Kerry get out of this deal? They get to create nuclear missiles, as I mentioned. They get to create a nuclear weapons program, unabated. We don't get the opportunity to check because they won't let us into their military installations. They get to self-regulate and self-check their government on whether or not they're abiding by the terms of the deal, which is really stupid. Where's our benefit? Where's the thing that makes it good for everyone else? What does Kerry get from this? I mean, I just don't understand it. I don't understand. Where do we see the positive for everyone else? I don't know. And I just lost my Facebook feed, so I'm just talking to everyone here. I don't see how this winds up being a positive for anyone. Everyone's back. Hey. But I just don't see how it turns out to a positive. I mean, he goes over there, he saves the deal, and then what? How does anyone in the world get to be safer? I mean, ultimately, that's the end of the day. That's the question. When we look at North Korea, at the end of the day, we get to be safer because we end a ceasefire that's been in effect for 65 years. North Korea has a reason to bring down its military from the third largest in the world, bring it down, create innovation, stimulate their economy, feed their people, become an active player in the world and de-escalate their nuclear threat to the world. This is a positive. Everyone wins. There's a lot of positives for North Korea, for America, for the entire world, and for the region. So we got lots of positives there. What positive comes out of the Iran nuclear deal? How does anyone benefit besides Iran? Iran wins because they get to have money to fund terrorism and they get to become a bigger power in the Middle East and they get to have nuclear weapons. What else? Who else is benefiting besides Iran? How does it bring down the threat of nuclear weapons? How does it make anyone feel safer? Because it doesn't. It just doesn't. At the end of the day, look at the deal. Keep the deal and no one's safer than if we don't have the deal. It doesn't make anyone better off. And I think that's a big deal. And when we're talking about that, and when we think about it, at the end of the day, what benefit is not being safe? It's one thing to give up something to be safer. If we gave them $450 billion, we did, and we increased some threat of terrorism, but we removed the threat of nuclear weapons, that's an argument. That's not the case. So you have to say, if we can't get a safer world, why keep the deal? And a lot of people are saying, well, Israel's looking to start a war. No, they're not. And the U.S. Trump wants to start a war. No, he's not. He hasn't tried to start a war in North Korea. He hasn't tried to start a war in Iran. No one's trying to start wars. But there's a difference between standing up and saying, you can't just be a rogue terrorist nation and saying, oh, we're just going to let you do whatever you want. Appeasement doesn't work. It didn't work in World War II. It didn't work anywhere in the world. And it's not working in Iran. It's not working in North Korea. Appeasement did not resolve this. We needed a new approach. Peace through strength. Is it the perfect answer? No. Is it better than appeasement? Yes. So that's my take on it. And I think that it's a realistic answer to it. But, I'm more than happy to listen to what other people have to say about it and let me know. Maybe I'm missing something here. It happens. I wouldn't be surprised if I had missed something. But now I want to try and take another break here for a quick second. I'm looking forward to your questions. Please do let me know. I am watching the Facebook here, and I'll try and respond back. And I'm going to put it into the break, and then I'm going to try and answer a couple of questions on Facebook, making sure everyone can see and hear everything properly. But we're going to go into our next musical break, and then we'll be right back. So, hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me here at the No Soundbites Allowed, your favorite podcast. I know it is. You can admit it. And with your host, Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier, I'm always appreciating and thanking you for being here. You make this all worthwhile, and I thank you, folks, for listening in. And again, this is an episode I'm doing simulcast on Facebook Live, so people are able to see me as I'm speaking here, and I thank you all for it. And in this third segment, we're going to be talking a little bit about the latest school shooting. That is, if anyone on Facebook has interest, have a question, let me know. I will answer it for you. But I want to just talk a little bit about the school shooting because this happened in Palmdale. That was, was it a day? 2 days. It was yesterday, Friday, May 11th, there was a school shooting. And what happened is, in Palmdale, California, a 14-year-old ran away from home and went to school. He was going to a school and then was transferred out to another school. That happened first, and then he had an argument with his mother and ran away from home, apparently, as reported by his mother. And then he went to the school at about 7 a.m., and he started shooting at that school with he did have a rifle in this case. There was one 15-year-old that was wounded, but he should be fine. It was not a serious injury. The boy then let his parents, his father, he texted him and said that he had fired the firearm up in the air, according to the text that the father is reporting, and that he was going to the mall. Can you believe it? He's going to the mall. And then, thank you for that. I just got a like. And then he went to the mall. And then the police found him at the mall, and it was about 9 a.m. California time. and arrested him or took him into custody. And it was about that same time that they found in a field the firearm that he used for the shooting. Now, there's a couple of big questions here. That's what happened yesterday in Palmdale, California. And so the question that I have to ask is, first of all, how did this kid get that firearm? He's 14 years old. How did he get, whose firearm was that? Because obviously it was unsecured for the child to be able to get it and to be able to take it out and use it. So that is a big question. That's a big deal. Whose firearm was that? So that's a concern. Second thing that I have to ask about this is, if it wasn't his parents, where did he get it from? Who else gave it to him? Second thing that you have to ask is, how did he get into the school? And by the way, Anthony Delcor and Anthony Miller and Joseph Anthony, I want to thank you guys for watching. Thank you. So I have to ask, though, how did he get the firearm into the school? Apparently, according to several reports, and there's CNN and ABC and Fox, they're all reporting about this. And so far, the reports are saying that he carried the rifle, the firearm, into the school in a bag. There's your problem. Now, let's remember, California is roughly the second strongest anti-Second Amendment state in the nation. They have some of the biggest restrictions against firearms. In fact, everything that you hear President Obama, when he had spoken about it, Nancy Pelosi, Senator Schumer, when you listen to Governor Cuomo, everything that the anti-Second Amendment group is looking for, they all have gotten. They're quoting what California has done for restricting the Second Amendment and holding back the rights of law-abiding gun owners. So it's second strongest, just under Illinois, in particular Chicago. California has the strongest gun rights preventions. So somehow in that state where guns are banned, in that state where the rights of Second Amendment advocates are restricted, what we're seeing is that he still got the gun. A 14-year-old still was able to get a firearm. And that 14-year-old was still able to go onto a school, a gun-free zone, and with that firearm. And he was still able to use that firearm, allegedly firing out of a bathroom, to fire on his other firearm. And that is banned. The gun may or may not be banned. It's not clear. But definitely it was not allowed on the gun-free zone, and he did it anyway. He's not legally allowed to be able to have the firearm. He did it anyway. And he attempted to kill someone. That's illegal too, just by the way. And you know what? He still did it. So you have to ask yourself, since the laws didn't stop him, which is the main thing that they seem to say, well, if we have a ban, which they have in California, and if we have restrictions, which they have in California, we're all going to be safe. And yet again, we're proven, no, you're not. Because crazy people and deranged people and individuals who want to cause ill and evil in the world still do. This 14-year-old boy has a problem. And it's not because, and let's think about it, it's not because he got the firearm. It's not because he was able to get it into a gun-free zone. It's not because he was firing at other people. He has a problem. That he even thought of all of this and did this and was going to go to the mall afterwards. Why does a 14-year-old think the answer to anything is to go out and shoot a firearm? There is your problem. That is the root cause, and that's the root problem. Hi, Brian. Brian Schwartz is watching as well, and thank you for that. But that's the root problem. There's our problem. A 14-year-old decided that he wanted to go out and kill someone. There's your problem. The means by which he tried to kill someone doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter that it was a firearm. Could have been a pipe bomb. Could have been a baseball bat. Could have been a car. We've seen all of those used to kill people. Actually, all of the other things are actually more common. It's more common to see someone kill someone with a baseball bat or a car or with a brick or their bare hands. Almost anything is more common than with a firearm, especially, well, a rifle. And It's important to know that because that is the big deal. The problem isn't the firearm. It doesn't matter. And I keep mentioning firearm because it doesn't matter what type of firearm it was. It doesn't matter what the firearm looks like. It doesn't matter about its capacity. It doesn't matter about how many bullets it holds or how fast it fires or what it, whether it's all chrome and metal or whether it's all wood stock. It doesn't matter. It's the fact that a 14-year-old said he wants to go out and kill someone, that he wants to use this firearm to hurt someone. There's your problem. There's your problem. Because whether he did it with a car or a baseball bat, a firearm or a knife or anything else, there's your problem. And that's a problem that they see in England. I mean, firearms have been banned in England since, 1580 something? I think it's 1580, in fact, that they banned firearms and people use knives. They've had over 80 stabbings in the city of London alone. The city of London has outpaced New York City for deaths, and the deaths in London are because of knives. Crazy people, criminal people will take action regardless of whether they can have a firearm or not. By the way, even though they ban all firearms, you can't get a handgun, cannot get a handgun in London or in most of the United Kingdom. And the fact is, 40% of all their murders are with firearms anyway. So having a ban for hundreds of years still does not make people safer. It does not make people safer. So coming back to California and Palmdale, we're looking at the shooting. The bans do not make people safe. Let's actually have an armed guard, not a teacher, although I'm not necessarily opposed to that, but I'm talking about actually having a guard in that school. Imagine if Palmdale had, like Arizona does, like many states do, like New York City has had up until just recently. We had, de Blasio got rid of the armed police in many schools. When I went to high school, we had armed police officers in there. And I can tell you, why not? What's the reason not? Because if we'd had that in Palmdale, perhaps someone would have stopped the child looking at his extremely large bag that's carrying this firearm and say, hey, why do you have this firearm? What's going on here? Maybe that would have stopped it. Maybe that would have prevented that from happening. I can't guarantee it, but maybe it does. Maybe they would have caught the kid right then and there when the shooting was going on. Maybe they would have. I don't know. But it is important that we at least try, that at least we make that attempt. More important is we actually deal with the root problem. What makes a 14-year-old decide he wants to go to school and shoot at people, to kill people? That's the problem. What motivates a 14-year-old in this culture to go out and say, I want to kill someone? There's your problem. I don't care what the means is that they get that done by. I care about why are they doing it. And if we can stop that, we can answer this problem. School shootings aren't about the firearms. School shootings are about people who want to hurt other people, children that want to kill other children. There's your problem. There's the problem. And if we don't address that, I don't care if you have whether it's a firearm, a knife, or a van, you're going to see people die. We need to address this. There's something fundamentally wrong in our nation. Hi, Danny Krantz. That's Councilwoman Danny Krantz, who's watching on the show right now. It's good to see you there. Definitely make a comment if you wish or ask a question. I'm always happy to see that. Let's see. And I know I've been going on about a few things. Let me switch gears a little bit here at this moment. I do want to talk about what's coming up very, very, very soon. It'll be on Friday. I think I mentioned this a little earlier in the show. Friday, which will be May 18th, is going to be the SUNY Broome 9th Annual Homeless Awareness. Oh, I'm getting the name wrong. All right, I apologize. I hate when I get the names of events wrong. It will be the SUNY Broome's Homeless Awareness Sleep Out on May 18th. It starts at 5 p.m. I will be the featured speaker, and I will be speaking there at 7 p.m., between 7 and 7:30. And the whole idea is to bring up awareness both about homelessness and ways to get yourself out of homelessness, how to help yourself, how to help others who are in that, and to be aware that this could happen to anyone at any time. And that's a big deal, that anyone can become homeless at any point in our lives. And that's scary. So we do want to address that a bit, and we want to bring that awareness up and let people know. And hopefully we'll have some of the news media out. I know that we've asked it, WBNG, WNBF, WUTQ. A few places have been notified, and hopefully they'll be there in person to speak and to show how this doesn't just, it affects adults, it affects students, it affects families, it affects everyone. And there is nothing harder than having to sleep outside, and especially in the cold weather of upstate New York or anywhere in the nation, and not knowing where your next meal is going to be, or whether you're going to be able to sleep safely at night, and that you'll be okay. You know, not knowing what's going to happen next. Imagine being out, you have to sleep in the snow or the cold or the rain. These are big deals. And so we need to bring that up. And this is not political. Okay. I know there was a gentleman, Justin, a gentleman who was on one of my pages, and he came out and he wanted to make this into a political event, probably because of, I think it was motivated by other organizations. That's Justin West. And Justin, as I mentioned to Justin, this is not political. This is not about me making a political speech, and it's not about my political views, which I really don't speak about homelessness much, and I probably should. I know I've mentioned it a few times, but I'll go into it in more detail on Friday because it's a big deal. Hello, Blanche. Blanche Drewsdale is listening in, and I'm glad to see you there. It's a big deal, and I think it's important. And this is not about politics. And I hope that other organizations, as I've heard, there are a couple of organizations that are trying to turn this into a more political event, and I hope that they do not. This is not about politics. This is about helping people. They're not the same, and and politics is not involved. So I did want to make that clear, and this is open to the public. So even though it's done by SUNY Broome, and it is being run by Kevin Carr, he's doing a great job getting it all organized and set up. And I thank him for inviting me to be the speaker of the event. But this is not just for students. This is for everyone, because homelessness can happen to anyone at any age. I was about 24 when it hit me, and I had become homeless. But I've seen, and I was surrounded, my personal experience, I was surrounded by individuals who are 30, 40, 50, teenagers. It happens to everyone. There is no age that you're protected from becoming homeless. So that's something we all need to be aware of. And hopefully we can do things to try and help everyone and to overcome this. And so that's the goal, and that's what I want to see happen. And I hope that's going to be the case. So I did want to bring that up. I'm glad to see so many people are watching and being involved, so I'm very happy about that. But I also want to, let's see. So far in this episode, we've talked a bit about the Logan Act and what that is. We've talked about North Korea, Iran. Been talking about the 14-year-old, the school shooting in California, and a bit about just about everything that I wanted to talk about. And I've been watching, and I'm looking, and I'm listening for you guys to see your thoughts on this. I don't know if there's any aspect of these things that I haven't talked about or anything that I haven't brought up. Please do let me know. I'm always paying attention, and I'm listening for everybody. What I'll do at this point, let's see, we've been talking. I'm going to take another quick break just because I want to get something to drink. But I am paying attention, and then we're just going to go completely with any questions anyone may have on any subject. Doesn't have to be just those 3 topics I was talking about, but anything, and then we'll go forward from there. Okay, folks? So with that, and I thank you, by the way, for listening in and helping us out, because you do make all the difference. But we'll take a quick break and then we'll be right back. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us here at the No Soundbites Allowed podcast. This is your host, Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier, and I thank you for checking us out, where we try and answer the questions of the day that affect all of us with more than just 30-second sound bites, because it really achieves nothing. In fact, I wanted to go over something. There's a couple of things. Now, I see a question from Claudia about the closing of the mental institutions and what happens to the people that were using them. And that's a good question. This happened about 4 or 5 years ago. We saw the mental institutions throughout the state of New York were shut down by Governor Andrew Cuomo. And what happens to them is they become homeless. That is the majority answer. The single most common thing that has happened to all the individuals who were being helped by the all the facilities to help people who had mental disorders, long-term mental disorders, and could not be productive in society, they were turned out basically onto the streets. There have been some programs that try to help a few of them, but the majority, overwhelmingly, were just put out onto the streets, and they helped to increase the net number of homeless people we have in New York State. And you see that very often throughout all the country. A lot of people who are homeless do have mental disorders very often. They tend to go hand in hand. In some cases, it's being homeless causes that mental disorder. Sometimes it's the mental disorder that causes the homelessness. And we see that in New York State, that we had a dramatic increase across the country, especially in New York City. And New York City's been shipping those people out to other parts of the country. In particular, we see, as County Executive Jason Garnar brought up and made more public, the tradition in New York State to be able to just have New York City ship their homeless and people who are economically disadvantaged, poor people, and sending them all over the state. And this has been ongoing for decades. It's not new. And I have to say, to an extent, the county executive, Garnar, is a little bit of showboating and a little bit of politicking there, because it's not new. And it's also not illegal for New York City to send poor people and those with mental disorders to other parts of the country if they are willing to go there and to supplement them and pay them to do that. So that's not illegal. It's a bad policy. I don't like it. It doesn't resolve the situation, just ships the situation out to somewhere else. And it's been happening for decades, and no one's been able to stop it. And the response from New York City was, so what? And they're doing it anyway, and they continue to do it. So it is good that he brought it up and brought the attention and awareness to the public to this in a more direct way, and I do applaud that. I would love to see if he could actually get something done about it. But realistically, at this point, if he continues, and he was threatening to do some legal action on this, we're going to go to the courts. The courts are going to find that this is completely legal. No one has been illegally enticed or forced to move. They've willingly accepted this, and New York City can do it, just like we're doing it. We send people down to actually Atlanta and Georgia, and some other states are sending their poor people to our state because we have one of the highest unemployment economic aid to people who are not working or who are poor or who are homeless. So it's a problem. It's a problem. And the problem, again, we have to deal with the root cause. What is causing the homelessness? Part of it, a good part of it, is mental disorders, and we need to have that addressed. And that means that we don't cut the funding for our long-term mental illness organizations and facilities. We don't cut that. We maintain it and maybe even increase it. We don't get rid of it. That has not had a positive impact for anyone in this state. So that's a big deal. And it's very upsetting. So I hope, Claudia, that this answers that question for you and maybe answers it for a few other people who are listening to this or who have been listening. But let me also go on. I want to just bring up something else. I want to talk about an experience I had yesterday, which is really, really troubling to me. Because I was speaking with a younger, two gentlemen, 22 and 27-year-olds, one in school from Wisconsin. He came to Binghamton University from the state of Wisconsin. Another gentleman who's locally born here, raised here. And we had two very interesting parts of the conversation. One was a conversation about a gentleman. I asked him, he tried heroin, which is kind of scary. And I asked him, why? And he mentioned he had done this when he was a teenager. So the issue and the problem about heroin isn't new. It was at least 10 years old for him. So it's been going on. And it wasn't because he was on opioids. That wasn't it, because he wasn't. He was a teenager, and by his own admission, it was just a bad choice. He was among a crowd of people who were indulgent in that, and he made a bad choice, and he tried it. And thankfully for him, he didn't get hooked. It didn't give him the kind of high he was hoping for, and he didn't continue that. And he now lives a productive life. He has a kid. He's working consistently, and he's pretty happy with himself. And as a 27-year-old, and he's having a decent, productive life, and he doesn't involve himself with that. But I had to ask him, why? And that was the real question. Why would you, knowing everything we know about heroin, why would you do that? Why would you take that opportunity? And his only answer was, it was just a bad choice. I was having a bad day, a little depressed, was very high, and he tried it. That's it. And he didn't think of it. He didn't think of the consequences. He didn't think about anything else about it. And there's one of the problems we have with the heroin debate. Is the problem is a lot of people who are getting hooked on this aren't only those because of opioid addiction, but it's also in many cases because they're not seeing the connection isn't real for a lot of people. And I don't know what makes it more real than people dying. But I did want to bring that up. And I understand, we've all been young, we've all been dumb, we've all done things that we shouldn't do, but that still is no excuse. This will kill you. It's heroin. It is one of the worst things you could possibly put into your body, and it's not worth it. We watch far, far too many people die, and I think the numbers were somewhere in I know it's double digits. I believe it was about 60 or so people who have died from overdoses. It's troubling. It's quite troubling. And that's after many people are getting Narcan injections. Narcan is not some kind of miracle drug that's going to bring you back from the dead. This isn't a science fiction movie. This isn't a science fantasy or a fantasy film where suddenly, give them the Narcan and they instantly come back to life. You can still die, and it's still going to mess you up. And the Narcan doesn't suddenly stop you from wanting more heroin. How many times, there are many stories about people who are heroin addicts that overdose 3, 4, 5. I've heard of even one person 11 times that they overdosed on that. And they've gotten Narcan injections and they came back and they're still the same heroin addict they were before. And they still go back out and use the heroin and overdose again. Sometimes they die because of that. Sometimes they get another Narcan and they're brought back. But there's your problem. It's opioids. It's heroin. You're going to be addicted. And I think in the media, they misrepresent this sometimes. That, we'll give you the Narcan and you'll be okay. As in, you'll be okay, you won't be a heroin addict anymore. Narcan will take care of it. It will get rid of that overdose and it will make you better. No, it won't. You're still going to die at some point from heroin use. You're still going to die eventually from an overdose where no one gets to you in time. It's still going to destroy your life. You're still going to be an addict for life. There is no benefit, and I want to make sure I make that clear. There is no benefit from heroin. And I understand, like I was speaking with that gentleman, and I thank him for telling me about that honestly, that was his reason. But I can tell you, no matter how bad your day is, no matter how high you want to get, no matter how, I don't even know what reasoning it would be, but whatever that reasoning is, there is no reason to go and use heroin at all. Don't start that process because it never works out well. It never has a happy ending at the end of the day. It never does. And we have far too many funerals in not just throughout the entire Northeast, not just in Binghamton and Broome County, but throughout the entire nation, especially in the Northeast. We have far too many people who are dying far too young, far too often. It is something not worth doing. Don't do it. Now, the other thing I wanted to bring up about that. Hi, Mary. Mary Ruiz is watching. I hope you're enjoying. One other thing that I wanted to bring up is I was speaking to another gentleman, and I find it quite interesting. And this is the gentleman from Wisconsin who came to Binghamton University for school. He came to New York State because he thought, it's a progressive state. So that matches his mental ideology, and he thinks it's a great thing, and he's happy to be here. And I found something very interesting. And this is true for many people, not just students, that he had no idea what it is. He said, being a progressive, I believe I'm a social democrat. But that's not a socialist, and that's not a progressive, and that's not the far left. It's like, yes, they are. They're all the same thing. They're all part of the same thing. So I hate this. These 30-second sound bites that we hear, which is why I do this program, is these 30-second they make people think that there are all kinds of, there's all these different things. And one has nothing to do with the other. There's a communist, but that has nothing to do with the socialist. That has nothing to do with being a social democrat or being progressive. They're all the same thing. They're all on the same ideological side, and they're all the same thing. You can say the same thing about the right as well. They're all the same. Please understand that difference. And when people are trying to split it up so finely, to say, well, no, see, I'm a progressive like Citizen Action, and we aren't the same thing as a communist or a socialist. No, you're the same thing. It's the same ideology. It goes to the same place. You want to control the minds of individuals and to instill certain specific laws that manipulate and restrict thought because you have a better goal than others. That's your mentality. That's the ideology. And guess what? At the end of the day, it's the same thing as communism. It's the same thing as socialism. It's the same thing because you're going to the same goal. And if you're using a different name, well, that's just because you're trying to bring in other individuals that otherwise wouldn't. Like in this case, a gentleman goes, well, I'm a social democrat. Well, a social democrat is a progressive, and a progressive is a socialist, is a communist. Well, you can make the difference there. Socialism isn't communism. It's basically communism light. It's all the same thing, though. They're all on that same theme and along that same wavelength, and they go to the same outcome. And if you don't know that, that is scary. You need to know that. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be. I'm not saying to anyone, don't be a progressive, don't be a social democrat, don't be a socialist, don't be a communist. That's your choice. That's the freedom of America. You can be any of those things if you want to. But please understand what it is that you're talking about. Understand what it is that they want to do. Because at the end of the day, these are the goals. The gentleman from Wisconsin was mentioning to me, well, there's a big difference between ideology and politics and policy. No, there isn't. They affect you every day. Policy is the actualizing of the ideology. Ideology exists for a reason. It is the way that people think, and they have a goal. It is a goal, a political goal that they have, and the policy makes that goal attainable. And they both affect you every day. This is how laws are passed. I had something that gentleman mentioned to me that I thought was insane. Do you know, and maybe people agree with this, maybe not, and I'll put this out to people on Facebook. Do you think that there is a difference when someone says a law? Does that only mean federal law? Are laws only for the federal government? And that cities and states don't have laws? Because this gentleman, 22-year-old, who's going to college at Binghamton University, is told me directly to my face, no, they don't. Laws are only for the federal government. We don't have laws other than the federal government, which is the most mind-blowing thing I've ever heard. You got to be kidding me. That laws don't apply? No, there's city ordinances, which is a law, and there's state statutes, which are laws. But only the federal government makes laws. That is ridiculous. And the fact that students who are going to college at 22 years of age are turning around and telling me, no, there aren't, laws are only in the federal government, terrifies me. You have no idea what you're talking about. Laws are laws at every level of government, whether it's local, state, federal. They're all international. They're all laws. Laws are not specific to a certain branch of government. But if that's the mindset that's out there, there is a problem. And I'm not saying that it's because of progressives or because of socialists. Maybe, maybe not. But I can tell you this. There is a failure in our government. There is a failure in our society when 22-year-old students in college are saying that they think that laws only affect the federal government and no one else has laws. That's a problem. That is a big, big problem. And we really need to address that because that's scary and that's terrifying to me. But I hope that answers a couple of questions on homelessness, answers a couple, and we'll bring this up again at the event on May 18th starting at 5 o'clock. And there'll be sleep out. It'll be going all night long until the morning of the 19th. So please come down and you'll be able to speak with many people there about this and how to combat that. So we're happy to look forward to that. But that answers some questions maybe about homelessness. It has answered some questions from Claudia Miller about the mental institutions and how that's had an impact on us, addressing some of the questions about society, about heroin, and its eventual deadly outcome always. So let's see, we've been trying to decide. Now, Brian has a question here, and it just came up. And Brian Schwartz says, and this is the same generation that thought eating soap pods was a bright idea. Are you honestly that surprised by that? Oh my goodness. How do I answer that? Well, I answer it honestly, but first of all, Brian, applause for you. Thank you. That's perfect. Yeah, yeah, Tide Pods. This is a generation that eats Tide Pods. And they want to tell us that we don't know what we're doing. No, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that they think that Narcan can take away the addiction, that Narcan is the solution to heroin, that they would even look towards heroin just because they think it's fun. Even though they hear all the horror stories every day on the news, we have every politician out there trying to say they're going to solve this heroin problem. I mean, we have everyone in both sides, all parties, everyone across the Northeast and across the nation are saying they're going to fix this heroin problem. And I have to tell you, if kids are willing to, snort condoms and eat Tide Pods, you're not going to fix the heroin problem, because the problem is bigger than the drug. The problem is obviously something fundamental, because no one's ever, they're trying to change the color of Tide Pods because they think, well, it's a bright color. That makes people want to eat it. Really? I mean, Brian, I think you're with me here. Really? The color. Oh yeah, it's a bright color. So what? Just because something's a bright color, you want to stick it in your mouth? Really? Then that is really fundamentally a problem with our kids. But I don't think that's the problem. There is some other problem that's going on. And these are just symptoms of that problem. And I do mean that. I think the heroin use, eating Tide Pods, snorting a condom through your nose. I even heard there was a challenge. Believe it or not, there was a challenge out there that you would douse yourself in gasoline and light yourself on fire, and then go and try and douse the fire. You're right next to a water source, and then try and wash it off, which a lot of kids found out that even if you were able to immediately set yourself on fire and go straight into a pool, you're still going to have third-degree burns. And the flames don't go out automatically because they're chemical, and they're going to burn. They burn with a high degree, and it's going to tear up your skin. You're going to have third-degree burns. So that challenge didn't last a long time, because it was pretty obvious that someone just got themselves messed up badly. Because they burned themselves and tried to kill themselves. It's stupid. But why am I not surprised? These are all symptoms of a bigger problem. It's not that someone tried to put themselves on fire. It's not because they ate a Tide Pod. It's not because they're snorting a condom. It's not because they're going to heroin, even though they know it will kill them eventually. There's a bigger problem. I don't know where that problem's coming from. It's coming from somewhere, and it's a big deal. But so am I surprised that there are more and more kids that are doing this now? No, I'm not surprised. Joshua Riley, hey, and Esperanza, it's good to see you. Josh, I really look forward to answering a question from you. But I've got about another 3 minutes here, so I definitely want to hear from you before we get done, Josh. Go ahead and give me your best shot. Joshua, by the way, is a friend of mine, and we often have many, many comments back and forth. But I think the problem isn't the heroin. It's not the Tide Pods. There is something else that is the cause. It's the root problem. If we don't address that, this will only get worse and worse. There's no way to stop it. Claudia also has a question. Yes, kids are spending a lot of time and energy in a lot of the wrong directions. What does that say about parenting in this day and age? Well, that may be one of the root problems. Yeah. And Claudia, you got it. You're right. Parenting is an issue. That is one of the problems. I mean, that's one of the big... Oh, wrong one. Sorry. That's one of the big problems right now. Hello, Felicia, are we getting good parenting? And I would have to say, no, there's a problem. We're not showing kids, there's not enough interaction perhaps with parents and kids. We have schools too much in the way, and schools have a very defined protective stance. The government has taken a position where the school is the parent, and parents are just people who kind of babysit the kids in between going to classes. And I think that's the wrong way of looking at it. It really is. And that's why we're seeing this. We're having this breakdown in our society. People don't want to be parents. That's why being an adult is a verb. Really? It's a verb that you have to actively act like an adult. No, that's ridiculous. It's insane. It's stupid. I have no problem saying that. It's to say that, adulting is, you have to be an adult is a verb, and your adulting is a problem. And that problem continues to parenting, which is a verb and should be, because that is a responsibility. And we see so many kids not living up to that responsibility, passing it on to their parents. How many times do we see grandparents raising kids because the parents don't do it? And perhaps that is one of the biggest parts of why we see so many kids nowadays that are eating Tide Pods, that are taking heroin, because they have a structure, a family structure that is broken up, where the schools are trying to be the parents, and the parents are being babysitters, and grandparents are trying to pick up the slack and fix it, because the schools don't know what they're talking about, and they never have. Schools don't know what they're talking about. The Common Core, that's a great way to build a robot. It's not a great way to grow an educated, informed society. Just not. So, and we see this, and the result is, the answer is, look at the Common Core education, look at the robot building system that is federalized, and it shouldn't be, because the federal government has no right or way of properly educating anything. The government doesn't know how to do that. That's not what the government is built for, in my opinion. You may disagree, but that's my opinion. And that means that when you have this flawed system, the federal government doing something it doesn't know how to do, which is education, and they're creating what they think are the best people for the future, which means robots, that's not a positive for our society, because our society breaks down as it is, and we see a growth in heroin. We see kids eating Tide Pods, and parents who don't want the responsibility, and there are many, many who do, but we also have a lot that don't, and they're passing it on to grandparents, overburdening them, and the whole system breaks down. It's like a set of dominoes. It falls and it falls and it falls. Claudia followed up with another comment here, and that is, she says, parents have to work 2 jobs per parent just to meet ends, so there is a lack of time to spend with kids, not to mention putting kids in front of screens, as an example, game systems, TV, cell phones, etc. Well, yes, there is that. And again, like I said, not all parents give up their parental rights or find being an adult as being a verb. Some of them, as Claudia is mentioning, they work hard. They do the very best that they can. And, because of the need of work to pay bills, to pay for kids, everything, they are a lot. And so then we have that as a problem. So that is another layer to this. And there is another layer of those parents who just, in addition to school, they have TV and cell phones and the internet and social media that just occupy the kids' times, and they just use that as a babysitter instead of themselves. So yes, that is a very real and very difficult set of scenarios. But look at that. Let's look at those 3 things. So we've got parents who are either unwilling to be a parent. We have parents who are, due to circumstances, unable, because they don't have the time because of work and other constraints, that can't be the parents that they want to be. And we have a school system that is trying to destroy these kids. That, in my opinion, they're great at making robots, horrible at making involved, intelligent future generations of our society. That's not what government does. And so when you put those all together, you wind up in a really bad situation. a really, really bad situation where we just see everything fall apart. And that's what we're seeing right now. And that's why we see so much growth in heroin, why we have kids eating Tide Pods. Well, and it may well be why in California we have a 14-year-old bringing a firearm to school and trying to kill his friends and his fellow students, his peers. Yeah, these are all related problems. We need to go to the root cause. What's starting this? And is it the fact that we don't have parents or effective parents or parents who can't be there as much as they want to be, and the government is promoting that at the same time that the government is looking forward to making as many robots as possible? That's my point of view there. That maybe. But we have to address that, because if we don't, you're never going to stop. You can't ever stop evil. But you're never going to stop 14-year-olds suddenly deciding that they need to kill their peers. You're never going to be able to stop kids eating Tide Pods. They're never going to stop people who are going to try heroin. And you're never going to be able to stop people who don't know what's going on in their world, politics and otherwise. Howie Schwartz is watching. Hey, Howie. Actually, you're coming in right at the end. We've been going for about an hour and a half now. Actually, almost. Got about another 8 minutes, and then it'll be up. But I hope everyone's enjoyed this, because it's been a very interesting and interactive with live Facebook event. And I always find it interesting. I always thank people for asking their questions and just being involved, because it means a lot. It's the reason why I do this, because God knows it's not because I get paid. But I thank you guys for being involved as much as you are. You do make this really worthwhile for me, and you do make it interesting. What we're going to do is, I don't know. Sorry, had a thought and then it blew past me. But I thank you guys. I do think that it's important, and I'm going to have links that'll connect so you can look up the Logan Act for yourself and read about that, to read about the interactions of John Kerry with Iran and how that violated the Logan Act, but he won't get convicted of it. And also how it's so odd that he's being defended by the very same Democrats that said that were attacking Mike Flynn for doing exactly the same thing. Mike Flynn did it. He got attacked. It was horrible. And they said he violated the Logan Act. John Kerry violated the Logan Act. He's being defended. Well, you can't have both sides. They both did the same exact thing. Either they're both in violation of the Logan Act and they should have both been prosecuted, or neither of them are. There's no middle ground here. It's not one or the, well, my guy's okay and your guy's not. That doesn't work that way. It just doesn't. And politics should never be that way. At the same time, I want to also, I'll leave links about some of the prior in 2015, 2016, when I was covering and writing about, before I started doing the podcast, I was writing, and at my website, MVASS, I have several articles about Iran and the Iran nuclear deal, and I will be addressing that. And I want you to look at, you'll have that available with all the links and research that I did on that. Again, there'll be some links, and you've seen it on my Facebook page, about the homeless event that I'll be speaking at. Again, that is the 9th annual SUNY Broome Homeless Awareness Sleep Out that I'll be speaking at between 7 and 7:30. I'll be speaking. The event starts at 5 p.m. on May 18th, and you're definitely welcome to come to it, and you'll see that on my page. I think I sent out invites, but you can definitely look at that, and I'll have that linked here. And finally, I also have some links on the school shooting in California, which is in Palmdale, and I'll have that as well. And so we'll be able to talk a little bit about that. And I'll try and get some links about heroin and its causes and mental illness if I can as well. So you'll have all that in the podcast at its site. So with that, unless there's a final question that I can answer in 4.5 minutes, anybody? Anybody got something that I can answer in 4.5 minutes? No. Okay, so Facebook is quiet at the moment. All right. Well, I just wanted to double check that. Then my voice is a little sore, and obviously I have a slight cold, so I thank you for bearing with me as I speak with this cold. I thank you for the time today. I always appreciate and thank you for that. I'm looking forward to next week to be on. I always look forward to your questions. And please remember, you can always ask questions on my Facebook page. You can send them to me in email at info@vossconsult.com. You can reach me on Twitter at mvconsult. That is my Twitter. And you can always leave a message on Facebook for me, even if you have questions for the future. Oh, one question Brian asked, and thank you, Brian, for asking. Let's see. He says, do you enjoy what you do? And I laugh for a very specific reason. Brian, some days, yes. Some days, no. And the reason for that is I don't get paid for this. I don't make any money. By the way, if you want to donate, please go right ahead. It's very expensive to do all this. The equipment, as you can tell, is not cheap. So yes, donations, fantastic. But I don't get paid for this. I do this just because I believe it's the right thing. I think it's important. And I don't think it's being done enough in our community at a local, federal, state, international level. We're not having enough of that interaction. We're being held down to just 30-second sound bites like we're idiots. And I think that's wrong. And that's not the way our government is meant to be. We have individuals like Senator Schumer, Representative Pelosi, actually quite a few people in all of our government that are talking down to the public. That are saying, well, we're making the decision and you have to just go along with it. And that's not the way our system's built. So I do enjoy speaking and speaking out and having things change. I think that's very important. And I think that's a great thing. So I do enjoy that. What I don't enjoy is having people attack me for having an opinion, for saying, yesterday, the same gentleman who didn't understand what his political ideology is and how that affects policy, same individual who could not fathom that policy is important to his daily life, the same person who looked at me and said, how could you be a Republican? What do you mean? Well, you're black. What's that got to do with it? I'm a black Puerto Rican. And this mentality that's out there and very well supported that says, if you're a person of color, well, you must be a Democrat. What's wrong with you if you're not? I don't enjoy that part. I don't enjoy having to stand up and say, wait a minute, I have to defend the fact that I have a mind and I have an idea, that I read laws and I pay attention to politicians and I look at the effect of things and I have to justify my beliefs. No one else does. No one else has to turn around and say, well, let me justify why, if you're white or if you're whatever. I don't hear in the same way that I'm expected to justify why I'm a Republican. I don't hear other people going, well, justify why you're a Democrat. No, you don't have to. You can be that. That's our nation. You can be anything that you want to be. And I don't care. You want to be a communist? Fantastic. Be a communist. At least what I am asking and what I believe is important is be educated. You want to be a communist? Know why you're a communist. Have a reason. You want to be a socialist. You want to be a reactionary. You want to be a conservative, a libertarian. I don't care what it is. Be whatever it is you want to be. Have a reason for it. Know what it's there for. Know what you're looking to do. Have a reason. So I think that's very important, and I do get very excited about that. I do love talking to people, and I am a bit gregarious. So I do love that, Brian. So I love that aspect of it. And I love to be able to get out and have events where I'm able to speak to people. And probably the biggest thing I love is being able to speak to many, many politicians and individuals like Josh Riley and many others who are involved, who I call politicos, which I am as well, to be able to involve ourselves in local government, state government, federal government, and have some impact on changing laws for the better. I think that's very, very critical. So do I enjoy what I do? 90% of the time. Well, realistically, 80% of the time. I do. I really do love it. I do love what I'm trying to do. And 20% of the time, I just get really, really frustrated because I'd like to see these things happen overnight. I'd like to see everyone become educated, to make better laws, to be involved, to go out and vote for whomever you want to vote for, at least when you have a reason, and to try and make our nation better. It gets frustrating sometimes. So it's a very long-winded, like I said, I'm gregarious. That's a long-winded way of saying, yeah, 80% of the time, I do love what I do. I'd like to make some more money on it. I'd like to make money at it, but yeah, I do love it. 80% of the time, I love it. And 20% of the time, very insanely frustrated. But isn't that about anything that you have a passion for in life? It's never perfect. But with that said, we've gone a little over an hour and a half, and I do thank everyone for checking it out. Obviously, you can look at the video on YouTube and pick it up, and I'll have the podcast so you'll hear the audio for this. I thank everyone who's been involved. That includes Claudia Miller and Brian Schwartz, Howie Schwartz, Anthony Delcor, Danny Krantz, Felicia Mitchell, Joshua Riley, Esperanza Mendez, Linda Vasquez, Ed Caro, Mary Ruiz. I'm trying to mention everybody here. Blanche Truesdale, Sandy Salas, Dave Weston, and Tina DeBella, Caswin Sinclair, Ellis Madison. I thank you all for your time with me today, and so many others that I didn't see the names of, that I wasn't able to bring up. But I thank you, all of you, for your interest and your support, and I hope to see you again maybe next week. And we'll talk again soon. Thank you, everyone.
Touch that dial, you'll never find me on the radio. Coming to you live from the sound of wisdom crashing on my life low. Death laughs when passing over arrived when my chips worth cashing in. You'll never find me on the radio. You'll never find me on the radio. You'll never find me on the radio. Don't touch that dial, you'll never find me on the radio. Coming to you live from the sound of two hearts sing chants for, chants for fleeting love. You'll never find me on the radio. You'll never find me on the radio. You'll never find me on the radio. Don't touch that dial. You'll never find me on the radio. Coming to you live from secret needs of never being tired of loving its endeavors being lies of. We like cloaks and daggers too. You'll never find me on the radio. You'll never find me on the radio. You'll never find me on the radio. Don't touch that dial. You'll never find me on the radio. Coming to you live from sound waves gone crashing. I'm alive though that laughs well passing. I've arrived when my chip's worth cashing in. You'll never find me on the radio. You'll never find me on the radio. You'll never find me on the radio. Don't touch that dial.